Hello and welcome to another video. In this video I want to show you a demo how you can create tar and tar.gz files from your Docker images so you can back them up easily. Here I am on my Ubuntu instance in my terminal. Let's take a look at the image that we'll be working with. And this will be a very straightforward Flask REST API. I have two endpoints here, one at info, one at info2, that print out some message. And in my Docker file, I'm using Python 397 Slimbuster. I'm doing my pip installs, and I'm copying my application file over, and then I'm running my Flask server. So let's go over back to our terminal and let's build this Docker image. So we just do a Docker build and we'll tag it with new container version 1.0. And let's build this. Let's take a look. Docker images, and here is my new container, and we're good to go. It's 128 megabytes. Before we continue, let's make sure our Docker container really runs. So we do a docker run ti rm. So interactive mode, remove the container once the image is stopped, the container is stopped, and we want to export port 5000 to port 80. And we want to give it the container name, new container version 1.0. Let's hit enter. Okay, and now let's go ahead, if we can access our REST server. I'm going into my Firefox browser and I'm going to localhost 127.0.0.1 and then to info. Let's hit enter. Fantastic. Here is my important information, and if I go to info2, there is my even more important information. So this works just fine. Now let's take a look how we can back this image up. Let me clear my screen. Let's do a Docker images again. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to create a tar file of this container image, this Docker image here. This will allow us to easily move the files around and back them up. I did create a folder before in my directory in here, which I called Docker Backups. So in order to create our tar file from a Docker image that we locally, for example, have, you would run the command docker save. You give it now the container name, new container version 1.0, and then you can either pipe it or just with a -o flag or -- output, and then we want to move it into our Docker backups, and we call this new container version 1.0 .tar. Let's hit enter, and it will create the tar file for us. Once this has completed, we can just do a ls docker backups, and we'll take a look, and here is our tar file now. So now we have taken our container image and we've converted that into a tar file. This tar file now you can move around, store in the cloud wherever you need to, and that makes it quite nice for backups. Now let's go ahead and remove actually our image here. So I'm doing docker rmi, and I'm forcing the remove. I'm taking the image ID, I copy it and paste it over here. Let's remove this. Let's run our Docker images, make sure that my new container is really removed, and let's take a look at how we can restore this container from our backed up tar file here. Let me go ahead and clear my screen. And now to restore our image, the command that we want to run is a docker load. We need to give it an input parameter, and in our case it was the docker backups, and then it was the new container 1.0.tar. And let's hit enter, and you see it's restoring the layer. And now let's check if our image really has been restored. And here is my new container version 1, and everything is back to where it's supposed to be. And now let's also check if it runs. Docker run, interactive mode, remove, export port 5000 to port 80, and we give it the new container version 1.0. Let's run this. It fired my Flask container up. Let me move over here, close this, and open a new window in Firefox. And if I'm now going back to 127.0.0.1/info, there is my message, and info2, there's my message. So this now allowed us to go ahead and back up a Docker container image or a Docker image into a tar file, allowing us to move it around, send it around, back it up, whatever we need to do. And then from that tar file, restore our container and all the layers back to our repository and run the commands that we need to. If you have really large images and the tar file may be too large, you can also save the Docker files to a file with Gzip, and the command for that would be, after I cleared my screen, would be a docker save. Then you want to give it the container name, new container version 1.0, and then, no, this is not a, it's a container. And then what you want to do here is that you want to pipe it into Gzip, and then you want to write it out to the file. In my case, this is docker backups is the directory, and then new container 1.0.tar.gz. Let's hit enter. And once that has completed, we'll take a look at the size difference between the tar file and the tar.gz file to show what the differences actually are. I'll just do an lsltr, and then this is docker backups. So let's take a look, and you see here the tar.gz is a lot smaller than my tar file. So this allows you to also back up your Docker images into tar files or tar.gz files, and with if you use Gzip, your backup files will be a lot smaller. And let's go ahead and do the same thing what we did before. If I'm going back to Docker images, let's go ahead and remove the new container image right here. Let's go ahead and remove it. Let's make sure it's gone. Perfect. And now I can just do a docker load, and I'm passing in my input flag again, -i or -- input, or you can also pipe it in if you want to, or direct it in. And then it is the docker backups, new container 1.0.tar.gz, and let's hit enter on this one, and it restored my layer, it restored my container. Docker images, nope, docker image, I can't type. images, and here is my new container again, 128 megabytes. Everything is back in order. This showed you another way how you can store a Docker image also in a smaller version using Gzip. And this is it for this demo. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.